Blythe
Yay.
for a discussion of the history of Balboa today.
Balboa.
Yeah. So settle in, get comfy, eat your meals, and enjoy.
Yeah, so the disembodied voice is going to be coming from behind the couches. I would like this to feel more chummy and less lectury. So feel free to ask questions, stop me at any point. It's entirely possible a lot of my answers will be I don't know. Or I used to be a consultant, so the patented, well, it depends, will probably show up a lot. But just to say a little bit about me, I want to emphasize I am not a professional historian. I get to work with professional historians, and that's really neat. I'm a knowledge manager, so I work. I have an interest in this topic because I think a lot about how we share what we know, how we codify what we know, how we talk about what we know, and that is often a very sometimes has a lot of nuance and not a lot of satisfying answers. But that is my disclaimer that I'm not a professional historian. The things I'm going to talk about, I owe a lot to other people. So I would not take myself as a final arbiter on what is true. In particular, I owe a lot and would encourage you to go talk to or read the writings of Bobby White. He's been, for years, he's had the Swung Over blog. Chisomo Salamani. Desiree Roffers, she's teaching here. I've had the opportunity to talk a lot with her. She's gotten to study with a lot of the original old-time dancers. Same with Nico Centino and Corey Mankey, are just some people that I owe a lot of what I know to. So I'd encourage you to talk to them and not just take everything I say as like the final word in Balboa. But we are going to talk about Balboa. I've been dancing Bal since, I think I had my first workshop in 2010 or 2011. And I started swing dancing in 2009 in college. And I know at the time it was like, oh, this is the dance you do when the music gets fast. Which is also true, but not the whole story. But Balboa is a dance that comes from Southern California. Depending on who you ask, Nick Williams will say 1920s, or he talks to some old-timers that'll say well, we can pretty confidently say 1920s. I think Bobby White in his material will say well, we can also be pretty confident 1930s. That is the challenge with street dances or dances that are not ballroom codified dances. There's always some squishiness onto when these things originated, but we can say late 1920s, 1930s, influences in Southern California likely coming out of other partner dances, like ballroom dances. So there are box steps, foxtrot. From the jazz age, there you would have Charleston. There's another one that's escaping me, but there are partner dances in the region at that point in time. And the teenagers of the time, who are also the old timers we talk about, very much liked the big band music coming out of the East Coast. They're a theme that I'll talk about a little bit, and then if you come to my blues talk tomorrow, I'll talk about a lot too, is the impact of technology on dancing. So think about radio in the 1930s, and also the time difference between the coasts. So we have a 3-hour time difference. A band might record something or play on the radio at 9 o'clock in New York. Well, it's 6 o'clock in LA. So they would be able to hear that music, go out and dance. So in the I'm going to try to disambiguate some terms. So late 1920s, 1930s, Southern California, there are influence of these partner dances. Most of the people dancing at the time might have had some sort of foxtrot lesson. They have this loose ballroom hold they're used to. And there are sort of 3 big families of dances that we might talk about at the time. One is swing. So this is not confusing to anybody who dances now, because when we talk about swing dances, we're talking about a family of dances. But in Southern California, LA area at the time, when we say swing, it was a dance. They're like, oh, I dance swing. And this is a dance that has that closed ballroom position, a lot of twisting, turning, just the geography of 2 bodies connecting means there's only so many things you can do. There are things that are easier to do than others. So orbits, things we're familiar with in Balboa today. Out and in, stretching, an emphasis on footwork. These are all hallmarks of swing with a capital S. Again, not at all confusing when we talk about swing as a family of dances. Then Balboa, so what people would have agreed was Balboa or talked about as Balboa, is a close embrace, shuffly dance that is also done to swing music. So swing is a dance done to swing music. Balboa, close embrace, shuffly dance done to swing music. Influences, again, probably foxtrot, a box step, and that feeling translates to the dance. A story that I was told, I think my first Balboa teachers, I believe Steve and Heidi, they came to Purdue when I was there in, I think, 2010. Very awkward workshop. They were going through a divorce. So a lot of the workshop was like, oh, you're still talking about stuff. But they did, this is the story that they told me, and I've heard variations of this story before. So this is like grain of salt territory. At least parts of the story I feel pretty confident about. There were ballrooms that were very crowded. So in the 1930s, no one cared about fire code. Did you have money to come dance? Phenomenal. Pack in. So Balboa becomes a very close dance because there's only so much space you have to dance. The apocryphal part of the story that I've heard from a couple people but haven't seen written or reported on exactly is that bouncers might have come around with like a rolled up newspaper, and if they could fit that newspaper between you and your partner, they're like, dance is over. I would love for you to pay me more money to stay on the floor. So a version of the story I've heard is, especially if you were with a date or someone you were more committed with, you might spend several hours doing a very close shuffly dance together all night. And when we fast forward many decades later, many of these original dancers, when they came back to Bobby McGee's, they were still dancing with the same person for decades. So there's a very there can be a very intimate feeling with this dance. It's not really a showy dance. There's a quote, I forget if it was from Dean Raftery or Roy Dameron, that there was no such thing as a Balboa competition. It was not a dance that was I'm gonna show off for an audience. Of course, these were largely teenagers, young adults who were doing this dance, so there's always a level of, maybe I want to be showy for my partner, I want to do something impressive for my partner, I want to show off for my friends, but there wasn't if you've been, actually, quick show of hands, how many people have been to bal events maybe outside of this one? About a third. So a lot of bal events will have what we call now a pure bal competition. Would have made no sense in the 30s. So a pure bal competition is a modern term for what the old timers would have called doing Balboa, which is a dance where you don't have to break away the out and ins, you don't bring in other dance vocabulary. It's a very close, shuffly dance. And we in the modern scene call that pure Balboa. And there are, of course, discussions of is that the best term to use? But it's the one that's understood. So that's swing, Balboa, but a lot of what, especially if you're in the last 2 hours, you're probably learning was bal swing. So this is another dance that is in the mix. And this is influences for other regions start coming to Southern California. So Whitey's Lindy Hoppers, if I'm remembering my timeline correctly, it's 1937. This is a very famous African-American dance troupe from New York. They were in Hell's Poppin', the clip that gets passed around. And so they're, Lindy Hopper's doing a very different kind of, I say very different, they're doing a different kind of dance than Balboa, and influences from these other Lindy Hop, Jitterbug, these other dances come to Southern California, and other dancers fuse that or bring that into their the sensibilities they have. So yeah.
Can you say something about what the swing dance looked like, the original swing?
Yeah. I think maybe the best clip to see, this is me trying to stop my brain from going off on another tangent, is the original swing dance, or like swing with capital S. The example I've seen is, if you're familiar with the beach clip. The beach clip is, I forget how many couples, I think like 3 to 5 couples. And that has some similarity, you can see like some similarity to bow swing. There's some like out and in idea. There's a lot of twisting, there's a lot of kicking. There's a moment in the clip where a couple is on the ground and they're doing like shimmies back and forth. So that, to my mind, and this is where I think like, Nick or Bobby or Desiree would probably have a clearer answer. To my mind, it looks like it's not quite as smooth to me as bow swing. It doesn't have the same like vocabulary we'd recognize, but neither is it like linear, like Lindy Hop, like 6 count Lindy. It's sort of this, it sort of has a lot of rotation, a lot of orbits, a lot of energy. Like when I was watching the clip, there's a couple that does something that looks really like a toss out. But then they go into like, there's like a lot of shag influence, there's a lot of other kicks in it. So there was a term, again, that Bobby used, was sort of like everything in the kitchen sink swing, that has like a lot of different influences. Yeah. So bow swing has, when it starts to get familiar to like my eyes, it has like an out and in basic-ish for the dance. And some of the originals are like so these dancers that did bow swing, I think the way we would, or maybe like drew inspiration for what we say bow swing, Willie Destatoff, Maxie Dorf, Ann Mills, and Natalie Esparza. So still had like this very shuffly, but brought in out and ins, things like toss outs. I really like Willie Destatoff's videos. So like something that I think is really cool about Balboa is, even though we learn what sort of feels very codified, but watching the original dancers, they all have sort of their own flair and take on it. And Willie, I realize for people on this side of the couch, it may be harder to see, Willie has this really interesting bent leg crossover where he has this very, it's not wiggly, but he has a very dynamic way he works with his lower body in his partnership, and I really like watching Willie Destatoff's dancing. Sorry, this is me pausing to get back on some form of track. So that is, so actually building from that, something that I appreciate about a teaching couple today, Corey and Susan Mankey, they've spent a lot of time with videos of original dancers. And they spent time with some original dancers, and I took a really good class from them. And it was just all like how to do a basic, like an old timer would have done the basic. So the basic we learned, like the step, step, hold, step, but, like the up hold basic, largely Maxie Dorf inspired. So even though there were, there's, a group of people that we were like, oh, here are the Rafteries, here's Ann Mills, here's Roy Damron. There were hundreds, thousands of people dancing at the time, and we only have so much information on them because, this will lead me to the technology piece, so I'm going to hold that thought for a second. But what I love about the Mankeys is they're very good at like bringing up or like highlighting, this is how this person did this basic. And so even with the same quote unquote basic step, there's a lot of different ways. Like there's a couple that had more of almost a pendulum in the basic rather than a straight up and down. But that's how they danced, and it was great, and it was all Balboa. Fun times for me. Any other questions while I just collect myself and like check my outline to see where to go next? How do I sound? Good so far? Yeah. Let me pass around a couple things just as I'm talking. So with specifically, I've been talking generally about SoCal or Southern California. Balboa, a term I really like, again, that Bobby White used is if the Savoy Ballroom is sort of the spiritual home or the spiritual center of Lindy Hop in New York, the Rendezvous Ballroom in Southern California is the spiritual home of, or spiritual origins of Balboa. So I have just a picture of the ballroom I'd like to pass around, and I'm going to step out of frame real quick. Here you go. So this is, and I think Balboa Peninsula, if I know my geography, it's about an hour outside of LA. So one of the challenges is getting there if you're a teenager, but that's a place that would offer Balboa shuffle lessons. So some names for early dance would have been Balboa, shortened to, or Balboa shuffle, shortened to Balboa. But a lot of the original dancers were dancing all throughout Southern California, or LA. There were, sort of on the note on the old timers having their own style, one of the interesting notes that's come up in several interviews. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a push to like interview, learn from video, original dancers talk about their experiences. And one of the ideas I found compelling was that you could tell where somebody, what high school they went to based on their dancing, that there was enough, you have the group of people you learn with, you say, oh, you dance this way, you're probably from there. In a contemporary context, I took a class with Mickey Fortnace recently, and he talked about when Balboa was becoming more popularized nationally, that there was a time where you could sort of tell if you were an American versus European Balboa dancer, because the Europeans had a preference for triple steps that showed up a lot in their dancing. And nowadays, it's sort of harder to tell because of the prevalence of like Instagram, other videos. Everyone has, most people have a phone. So there's a sharing that is easier nowadays than previous. So I just have a quote from closing about like sort of how this dance came to be. I have a quote from Bobby I really like, and I just thought it would be good to share. What's important to take away from SoCal's mid-30s primordial swing dance swamp is that the young dancers themselves were either adapting things to suit their own style or needs, or just making it up as they went along. There isn't a governing body on the creation of street dances, and so very rarely are things clear-cut, and almost always is there an exception to the rule. So if I stop and have a 1,000-yard stare, I'm trying to say the accurate thing, but sometimes there just isn't like a very clear-cut thing. Let's see. I want to talk a little bit more about the people who are doing the dancing, then I want to transition to, I think, technology and later. So back to technology, a bit about technology and video. We don't have a lot of video of original dancers at the time. So most of what you might have seen of like Southern California swing dancing shows up in movies, especially in like the late 30s through the mid 40s. A lot of the like, oh, teenagers are having a good time is like Southern California swing dancing. Probably doesn't hurt that they're in Hollywood and you can get them in a studio. There were swing dance competitions, and one of the incentives for those competitions was you might end up in a movie, you might end up in a scene. So just something I want to tackle, and I may sound a little awkward talking about it, but something I want to tackle is like there's what we see on film is largely like white appearing dancers. And that can contribute to the notion of that, like this was largely white appearing people doing this dance, which from talking to original dancers and just like crediting Nico Centino working through archives in LA, looking at newspapers and other, trying to find images and talking about this dance. Southern California had desegregated dances, so there were people of color doing Balboa. There's, I think, a quote from Roy Dameron that was relayed to Bobby and Chisomo, that, or at least Bobby, that there were black communities or dances that would largely have black attendees, and they were doing what white swing dancers were doing, but looser, just more with their own aesthetics. So I think I just want to call that out because I think it's important to say, like, even though we have this footage, and we have to remember that Hollywood wants a mainstream, very white friendly, or just they have a lens through which they are presenting history, and that is not necessarily representative of what original dancing was like. So you might have started, I think again, Roy talked about, oh yeah, so we'd go dancing at this ballroom, we'd go from like 9 to midnight while they're still dancing in Central Avenue, and then go to a ballroom that was a largely Black American crowd. So that neither was everything super harmonious, but just like the history is more complicated than like Hollywood or just some of the original clips we have would like to present it. So fast forwarding a little bit, World War II happens, kind of a big deal. And there is still like movies that are featuring swing dancing, but a lot of dancers, they were teenagers, they might have ended up joining the military, you have a family, and doing Balboa till 3 in the morning, just when you're not a teenager anymore, just may not be as doable. So I think I got another quote. So Jewel McGowan and Roy Dameron were featured in a number of clips from the 40s. And these dancers used their swing dancing experience, and they could transition to quote unquote professional dancing. So they could be a dancer doing tap, other kinds of background dancing, ballet, modern dance. They were set up well to become dancers in like the musical golden age era. So some original swing dancers might have transitioned that way. But Balboa is Balboa. Like there's taste change, right? This was a street dance. No one was teaching it in ballrooms. And in the 80s, 1980s, Marge Tequier, one of the original dancers, did get people together at Bobby McGee's, and I love this description of Bobby McGee's. Bobby White called it a Shoney's on acid. It is a family restaurant. They had a big floor, and it was more like, hey, let's just get our friends together. Let's get our friends together. Let's dance. There's a space we can do that. It'll be a good time. And a lot of the footage we have, or at least a lot of the footage that I've seen too, is from the Bobby McGee's era. So this is when these dancers who in their teenage, early 20s years in 1930s, 40s California, fast forward 40 years, so they're now in their 60s, 70s, older, they still can dance. If I've jokingly called Balboa my 401k dance, because it's something I want to get decently good at now, because if history's any indication, like you can keep dancing this for a while without hurting your body too much. So a lot of the, and I think again, Bobby called like camcorder like our greatest gift to Balboa, or at least greatest gift to our community. So my family didn't have a camcorder either till myself or my brother was born. I forget which one. And not to sound like a back in my day kind of person, but the original camcorder, I remember my grandpa showing it to me once, was a shoulder-mounted, like I'm gonna hold this thing. It has a full-on video cassette that you put in there. It was heavy. You had to recharge it, but there was a number of camcorder. Like people could bring a camcorder to Bobby McGee's, and you could actually see like, okay, what are people doing? Or later you could go back and look at the film and see what they're doing. because for better or for worse, memory is a fallible thing. If you asked me, what did I do a week ago, I could probably give you a decent summary of what I did. If you asked me what my dancing was like in 2010, I've forgotten on purpose. So, having interviews with old timers are great. Again, as a knowledge manager, one of my primary ways of getting information out of people is interviewing them, but their memory is often fallible, and that's human. Or it's just hard to articulate things that you do so naturally. Like asking somebody who has a lot of muscle memory, hey, how did you do that? Like, oh, I do something, and it's good. Yeah, good enough? No. So the Bobby McGee's era, we get video. There are dancers that are still dancing today that get to dance with the old timers. I got to take a class 2 years ago from Great Lakes with Tise, and she talked about just the feeling of dancing with them. Like, it's hard to see from the outside, but so much of this is felt. So part of the class was like, this is what it feels. This is the smoothness of dancing. I got to talk to Valerie Sandstrom from Cleveland, and she also she shared some video that she had. So she had some video that had been converted from VHS to DVD, so we could like pull it up and look at it. And because she's like, the hard part is like you can see what they're doing, but the original dancers have a hard time describing it because they're not teachers. That's not their fault. Like, teaching something is a skill. Being able to articulate what you do is a skill. Pedagogy is a skill. I'm going to shout out Desiree, which is why I think Desiree is great. I think she's an amazing teacher who thinks a lot about the process of teaching. Valerie was telling me about, I think it was Maxie Dorf, working with Maxie Dorf, and she and her partner at the time, I was trying to do a come around, or a movement like a come around. And Maxie is like, no, that's not it. No, which is cool. Thank you for telling me what's not working, what does work. And like, well, you just feel it. Like, it just goes like this. These things go like this. And so video can help see like, well, we can now pause this, we can look at it, we can go backward. Though Desiree did remind me, some of the video, because it's early enough, you sort of have these nice amorphous blobs. It's like, okay, this shape is going over here, and we can sort of follow the shape. Like I said earlier, I do think it's interesting, like in the contemporary dance scene, like just as a contrast, that we have definitions that work for ourselves looking backwards. Like, no one in the 30s would have said, like, I do pure Balboa, or there's a pure Balboa contest. But these are categories that work for us, where we're at now. And now, like, we can video a lot, and we do video a lot. We get to video prelims. There are videos of social dancing. Instagram is full of people working on stuff. I think there's a movement one couple developed, which was a version of like an old timer. It was either a house roll or something else, but did it as like the lead goes down on his chest, leads the leg up, and like partner kickoff, very specific partnered movement. But since it's on Instagram, other couples have made that work, or other partnerships have made that work. And I think there's a video of someone pulling that movement who wasn't, is it Natalie or Natalia? Natasha. I was wrong on all counts. Someone pulled that move on Natasha who wasn't Michael. And it worked. But that's because like we have a thing that we didn't have previously, which I just think is, to me, is interesting, right? Like the changes of like sort of word of mouth showing community I can see, or how I have a very direct experience of this dance in like the 30s. I can see what my friends do. Maybe we talk about it, maybe we practice together. Bobby McGee's era, we have camcorders and videos from that era, and we're learning from original people. And then in this era where we have really, I think, like professionalized teaching in a way, and then you have Instagram and video and just a different kind of access to the dance, which sort of changes how we interact with it. Yeah, that was a very fun wrap up. So I'm just conscious of time. So it was about 1:16. I think the next class starts in about 15 minutes. Thank you for coming to my imperfect history of Balboa. Again, not a historian, get some things wrong. Sorry about that if I do. But I think this dance is really great. I like, and again, appreciate the amount of work that other people have put into learning, preserving, and then also transferring. So again, as a knowledge manager, it is one thing in my job to I interview, I've been working with a retiring scientist for a year. It is one thing for me working with a retiring scientist to say hey, great, here's your stuff, we put it in a repository. It's quite another thing to be let's organize a series of talks, let's disseminate. There's another part of that, which is talking about the things you know and sharing the things you know. So again, I owe a major debt to Bobby White, Giacomo Soleimani, Desiree Roffers, Nico Centino, and Corey Mankey. So these people have been very kind to share what they know with me, and I just again want to lift up their contributions. It's not just I learned stuff on my own. So thanks for listening to me ramble for half an hour. And if any questions, awesome. If not, I'll shut up and let you do some warm up before next class starts. Thanks.